The rain came down in sharp silver sheets that night, slicing through the faint glow of the streetlights as if heaven itself was weeping over the forgotten corners of the city. And somewhere between the flickering neon of a 24-hour diner and the silent shadows of closed-up shops, a young black woman named Aisha stumbled along the cracked sidewalk, clutching her tattered purse to her chest and whispering silent prayers that the bus wouldn't leave before she reached the stop because she only had $8 left to her name and not a single ounce of strength left to fight the world one more night. But fate, it seemed, had different plans for her, for just as she reached the bus sign, she saw him. A massive man slumped beside a rumbling Harley, a mountain of leather and muscle, with a bleeding gash across his forehead and a jacket patched with the flaming skull emblem of the Hells Angels. And though every instinct in her screamed to walk away, to not get involved, to remember the warnings of her mama, "Baby, don't talk to men like that, especially the ones on bikes." Aisha's heart simply couldn't ignore the quiet groan that escaped his lips as he tried to move, because kindness was something she had been taught not in comfort, but in hunger, not in safety, but in struggle, and it lived in her like a pulse, strong and steady even when the world forgot her name. So she took a trembling step forward, her sneakers soaking through in the puddles, and said, "Sir, are you okay?" The man lifted his head slowly, eyes hidden beneath wet lashes, his voice rough and low. "Yeah, I just need a minute. Hit the curb too fast." His words slurred, his hand clutching his side where the leather was torn, and though his bike looked intact, the man clearly wasn't, so she knelt beside him, ignoring the cold water seeping into her jeans, digging through her purse for the few crumpled bills she had, whispering, "You need a doctor." He shook his head, teeth gritted, muttering, "No hospitals," the tone of a man who'd rather die than sign his name on a form. And Aisha didn't understand the reason, maybe the kind that came with a past too heavy to carry. But she saw his pain, saw the blood darkening the sleeve of his jacket, and without another thought she ran into the diner, where the waitress was mopping the floor, and asked for a first aid kit, a cup of hot coffee, and a slice of pie to go, handing over her last $8 without hesitation, because saving a man's life was worth more than a bus ride home. When she returned, the biker was still sitting there, head bowed against the rain, and she gently pressed a napkin to his wound, cleaned the blood with shaking hands, wrapped it tight with gauze, and made him drink the coffee. He looked at her with a mixture of confusion and disbelief, like no one had done something kind for him in years, and said, "Why'd you do that?" She smiled faintly, eyes tired but warm. "Because you needed help." He chuckled under his breath, a deep gravel sound. "You don't even know me." She shrugged. "Doesn't matter." For a moment, they sat in silence, the rain easing into a soft drizzle, and he finally said, "Name's Rocco." "Aisha," she replied softly. He nodded once, then took her hand, huge, calloused fingers enveloping hers, and said, "You've got an angel's heart, Aisha." Then he revved his Harley, the roar echoing through the wet night, and vanished down the empty street, leaving her standing there with an empty wallet, soaked clothes, and a strange feeling that something in the world had just shifted. She didn't know that the man she helped was one of the founding brothers of the Hells Angels chapter in the region, a man both feared and respected across miles of desert and highway, and that her small act of compassion would ripple farther than she could ever imagine. The next morning, Aisha woke in her small apartment on the edge of town, the kind with peeling paint and a door that didn't always lock, and dragged herself out of bed for her shift at the nursing home, where she worked double hours to keep her lights on and her dreams alive, still thinking about the biker from the night before and wondering if he'd made it home okay. Around noon, as she was helping one of the elderly residents to lunch, she heard a strange sound outside, like thunder, but steady, rhythmic, and growing louder. At first, she thought it was a storm rolling in again, until the other nurses started murmuring and pointing out the window. Aisha turned to look, and her heart nearly stopped. Down the long stretch of road leading to the nursing home, a line of motorcycles was approaching, one after another, chrome gleaming in the sunlight, engines growling like lions. There had to be at least 100 of them, men and women in leather jackets and helmets, the insignia of the Hells Angels blazing across their backs. The staff froze. Some of the old men cheered. The manager came running, panicked, and Aisha just stood there, breathless, as the bikes rolled to a stop right outside the gate. The leader, Rocco, swung off his Harley and removed his helmet, revealing a clean bandage where she had patched him up. He grinned wide and said, "Found her!" The other bikers looked around until their eyes landed on her, the young nurse in scrubs standing by the window, stunned beyond words. "Aisha," Rocco called. "Get out here, sweetheart." Her co-workers stared as she walked out slowly, hands shaking, the sound of engines vibrating through the ground. When she stepped outside, Rocco spread his arms, laughing. "You didn't think I'd forget, did you?" She shook her head, smiling nervously. "I didn't do anything special." "You saved me," he said. "That's special enough." Then he turned to the sea of bikers behind him and shouted, "Brothers, this is the angel I told you about!" A thunderous roar went up as 100 voices cheered, engines revving in salute. Aisha covered her face, overwhelmed. Rocco continued. "Last night I was bleeding on the side of the road. Nobody stopped. Not one damn person. But this woman, this stranger, she gave her last dollar to help me. So today we give back." He whistled, and several bikers stepped forward, carrying boxes, groceries, clothes, even toys for the kids who lived in her building. Another handed her an envelope stuffed with cash. "For your kindness," he said simply. Aisha tried to refuse, tears streaming down her face, but Rocco placed a hand on her shoulder, firm yet gentle. "Don't say no. The world tried to break me once. People like you remind me it ain't all bad." The nursing home residents clapped and laughed from the windows, the staff wiping tears. And soon the parking lot turned into an impromptu celebration. Bikers lifting old veterans into sidecars for rides, nurses taking photos, kids from the neighborhood running up to see the roaring bikes. Aisha stood in the middle of it all, her heart full, realizing that sometimes kindness doesn't echo back right away, but when it does, it's louder than thunder. That night, after everyone left, she sat on her porch, the envelope in her lap, her mind spinning with gratitude and disbelief. Inside was not just cash, but a note, written in Rocco's rough scrawl, for the angel who reminded a devil he still had a soul. R. Weeks passed, and the story spread like wildfire. Local news picked it up, calling it "The Day Angels Rode for a Nurse." People stopped her on the street to thank her, donate to her nursing home, even offer her new job opportunities. But fame never changed Aisha. She still took the bus, still worked late, still gave what she could to others. One evening, months later, she found herself walking home after another long shift when a young boy ran up crying, saying his mom was sick in the alley. Without hesitation, Aisha followed him, knelt beside the woman, and began to help. Same way she always did. Same heart, same grace, and as she worked, the faint rumble of a motorcycle echoed in the distance, as if fate itself was smiling down on her once more. Because kindness, when it's real, never dies. It rides on, roaring through hearts and highways, reminding the world that even in the darkest night, one good soul can light up everything. And though Aisha never saw Rocco again, every so often on her way to work, she'd see a single red rose lying on her porch step, wrapped in a scrap of leather, with the same scrawled message, "Ride safe, Angel," and she'd smile, whispering into the wind, "Always."